Hi guys, how's it going? I'm gonna take it that I'm loud enough that I don't need a mic. So as people come in, hopefully they can hear me. My name is Dr. Shanice Burton, and I am with the psychology department. I have been with HCC. I was adjunct for over 10 years, did a 1 year retention position after COVID, and then did a then began full time shortly after that. And so here I am. I love HCC. I love our students. I love what they stand for. And I, most importantly, love psychology. And I thank the Human Horizons Department for having me. When I heard about you guys in the fall faculty meeting, I was like, this is my lane. I need to be in that lane. I connect with this so well. And it resonated with me to be a part of what you guys are doing. And I'm grateful that I can share one of my favorite texts with you guys. So without further ado, how I teach the Alchemist. We're going to be looking at this from a psychological perspective. So we're going to be exploring inner transformation, self-discovery, and collective consciousness. And a lot of this is going to come from Abraham Maslow based on motivation and emotion. So I'll be tying in those things together. All right. So before uh, we get started, how many of you have ever read the book The Alchemist? Nobody. I love it. Yeah, that's all right. That's okay. That's the whole point of why I teach it. The word alchemy means to transform. Um, in a literal sense, it means to go from one chemical compound to an elixir. So it is about transformation. It is about creation. This book, as a summary to you guys, is a parable, a modern day parable of a Andalusian boy by the name of Santiago who has a dream, and this dream tells him he needs to go to Egypt to search the pyramids to find treasure. Okay. The reason why I chose this text and why I believe it's so paramount for students to, why it resonates with students is because it is a modern parable. Last night I taught at something called, well, I didn't teach, but I presented at something called Prezi Resi here in town, where you do random, people sign up to do random PowerPoints and people come out and see it. And I talked about Abraham Maslow and NBA Youngboy and the connection between the two. Do you guys know who NBA Youngboy is? He's a rapper, and he resonates very well with our dual credit students and our students. Um, NBA Youngboy, NBA, like the National Basketball Association, but it stands for Never Broke Again. Um, and so Santiago reminds me a lot of our college students, because here he is, this young teenage boy. He has this dream, and then he starts from Spain and takes this trip all the way to Egypt and starts going through the journey through the desert, right? And all of these things are symbols, right? As he goes on this journey, he falls in love. He meets a girl by the name of Fatima. He gets robbed while he's on this journey. He's in the desert, right? He finds out from a one of the robbers that the treasure is in a certain location. But when we get to the end of the book, we don't find that Santiago has found any treasure. The book kind of is like a cliffhanger. It leaves something open, like a lesson almost for the dream and the fortuitous tale of what was he supposed to get from that, right? Like, was he supposed to actually find treasure? So again, I chose this because it's a modern parable. It is spiritually inspiring but practical for everybody. This is a book that I feel like can resonate with any of us, because we all have dreams, we all have journeys in our life. We all have obstacles that we face, and we all search for something at the end of this life, whether it's a purpose, whether it's a goal, whether it's a whatever it is, right? Santiago is a modern symbol, as I said already, and this allows for students to have a personal reflection on truly who they are and where they're going in their life, right? My teaching philosophy is that literature, and is what I believe that Human Horizons is trying to do, is that literature is transformative. We have all types of different books that can mean something to our students if we choose to have the students put themselves in the position of the character, right? And Santiago is that character. In fact, I actually have two students this semester by the name of Santiago and Fatima, right? So it just kind of works out, right? So they see themselves, right? Well, no, they're not in the same class. So that's what's weird about it. But yeah, so you have that, right? Stories are a sacred space, right? Stories is a place, and in this book, it's so warming as you read the journey, as you follow Santiago. It it's almost like reading the Bible. He comes across King Solomon and Melchizedek, who is actually in the Bible. It reminds me a lot of Joseph, who used to have these dreams in Potiphar's house, if you guys know anything about that, right? And you don't have to be Christian to know some of these things, but there's a huge connection between these parables and what we know about where we're going in our life, right? Reading can also be a spiritual practice and legendary lesson. From my time of being here at HCC and seeing students before I come in, they may be reading something already for leisure reading or for whatever reason they're reading for different reasons, right? And it's always interesting to ask them what they're reading because they see themselves in what they're reading, whether it's the title, whether it's the character, whether it's the lesson. It's something in there that they see, right? Recently, I saw a student was reading Five Nights at Freddy, and I was like, "Why are you reading this book?" And they gave me a whole spiel about what it meant to them and how it was their friends that, like, oh, my friends, we went on this journey and we did this and we did that, and it reminds me of Five Nights at Freddy. And that is the parallel between what I'm trying to show and when we teach the book, The Alchemist. Legendary lessons in spiritual practice. We do have a lot of students who may subscribe to a particular religion or morality or some sense of ethical characteristic that they can connect to. And in this book, they can connect to Santiago and Fatima. Okay. Inner transformation. Let's talk about Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. How many of you have ever heard of that? So most of us know Abraham Maslow and the hierarchy of needs. So at the very top of the triangle or the pyramid with Abraham Maslow, there is self-actualization. As Santiago is on this journey, he is learning about inner transformation. He's learned, and that's the alchemy of it. That's the reason why it's called The Alchemist. He is learning different things about himself and people, right? His ideals of who he believes people are in the world, right? Of course, he's very green. So he comes from this Andalusian Spain. He is a goat herder and he doesn't come from a lot of money. So he thinks, I have this dream. I'm going to go after this treasure and I'm going to marry the woman of my dreams and we're going to live happily ever after. But then he learns something very valuable, not only about himself, but he learns that not everybody is who you think they are. Some people are not good people in the world, right? Some people want to actually take advantage of you. And he finds that out when he's robbed, right? Of everything he has. This is even before he gets to the treasure. All he has is like sheeps and a staff and just basic stuff, basic, whatever to get through the desert. He gets robbed, and now what is he supposed to do? Right? So you learn something about human nature. You learn something about yourself, what you can expect from people and what they can expect from you, what you would tolerate and what you won't tolerate. And this is the parallel between that and our students. As they travel along this academic journey or this life journey, they learn things about themselves. They learn who they can trust, who they can't trust, what friends they can have around them, what social circles they can be in. Do they struggle with certain things mentally, emotionally? All of these things are going through their head and they're trying to figure this out. And Santiago is the personable parable for them to figure that out in The Alchemist. Fear versus faith. Our students, and most of us, if we can imagine when we were in college and we were in our bachelor programs, or even when we were freshmen, going straight into 1301, 2301, all the basic classes, right? Learning framework, whatever it is that we were going through. Terrified, sitting in a room that is as big as an auditorium, some classes, not necessarily HTC classes. However, some classes, our classes are 32. Imagine if they come from a small town, or imagine if they're an immigrant from a community where they've never been exposed to American culture shock. Imagine if they're afraid of, and this is going to be pretty tragic, but yesterday I had a student who, before class, asked could she go to the nurse's office, and she was crying. She was very distraught. And she asked could she go to the nurse's office because her parents were on the phone with her and they were in active deportation. It's 3 p.m. to 4:30. She's a senior taking HCC classes, and she's taking psychology, and she's like, I can't focus right now because my parents are not going to be here. And my aunts are also being deported and they're here. What do I do? And what do I have to say to that student? What do I tell her? Me being a professor that thinks that this would never happen in my class, but this is the first time that it's happened in my class. And so I say to her, go to the nurse's office. Don't worry about what we're doing right now. And she didn't even come back. I guess she stayed there. She cried or whatever it was. The students in the class embraced her, and they couldn't focus on anything else. So what do? We watched a psychological thriller. We watched a movie to kind of help them take their mind off of what was happening. Fear versus faith. Our students are terrified of so many things, not only the things that they come from, but the things they're coming to. Santiago, same thing. What he was coming from and what he's going to, right? The journey in the desert being a symbol for being in a dry, desolate place. And the parallel between that and our students and where they're going and what they have to go home to. I had to drive home knowing that this student's parents would probably not get to see her graduate. And she's a part of the early college program here at HTC, and they probably won't see her graduate.
Like, what is the messaging that you're getting as what happens? Like, what the schools do for these students?
Well, I did ask, and they do have a counselor there who's over everything. And so they send them to the counselor, right? But I I didn't do, which next week I'll probably do a follow-up to see exactly what the logistics of that was and what happened with that student. But at that time, of course, school's not out. She can't leave. So she can't go see her parents to see them before they leave. She can go to the front office and maybe have somebody pick her up. And the dean there was like, well, we don't know who would come pick her up because everybody is at that point. Yeah. So I believe it was just the counselor that I know of that's there. And I plan on talking to them next week because I am at that school twice a week. So, and then the other students are being impacted as well because Scarborough is a predominantly Hispanic school. So, you know, it's it's something that I'm gonna come up against probably more than once.
I'm just wondering if like it's like school administration is intention all with families or any kind of like communication families.
Yeah, I'm definitely planning on following up. I just think as the end of, well, school was letting out and I didn't get a chance to get a clear, but I definitely want to follow up and see, what do I do? Other than the fact that I could change the temperature of what's going on in my classroom,
For sure.
but I can't be like, hey, yeah, go ahead and leave. Like, I can't do that,
Or ulterior motives. And figure out what kinds of reasons.
what resources they have. Absolutely.
Is there?
I do believe they do have that. Yeah. They're very, I feel like that high school, because of the neighborhood they're in, they are very, very connected to the community. So I feel as though when I do ask them, they will have something. And if not, then I'll reach out and, see what else we can provide them with. Yeah.
Sorry for derailing.
Oh, no, 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 it's fine. So fear versus faith, right? Listening to your heart. Santiago, as well as our students, they come here and they have real lives and they fall in love and they have goals and they have dreams and they have aspirations, right? And so they not only the dream, the physical dream of what Santiago has, but the abstract dream, right? The dream of where am I going and what am I going to do with my life, and personal reflection and all of these different things that we can connect the alchemists to have students really think about. If they've never thought about it before in their lives, they can finally, with this book, they can think about it. There's inner transformation and having them think about reflection questions. So this is the part where I would give students a handout. And on that handout, because of The Alchemist, we would be exploring, where do you feel fear is holding you back? What would faith look like instead? So choosing faith over fear. How would you approach your destiny with faith versus fear? And I would have them 10, 15 minutes, write it out, talk about it. We share, we discuss, we engage, we learn more about each other, we become vulnerable, and we get very intimate with this book. We would also discover self-discovery and personal legend. And connecting this back to psychology and Abraham Maslow, Abraham Maslow believed that at the very bottom of the triangle, that if you don't have physical needs, safety needs, then how do you get to esteem needs, loving, belonging, and then self-actualization, right? How do you get there if you're worried about where your next meal is going to come from, right? Santiago is very similar. He set out on his own, no parents, no one with him. All he had was a dream and a purpose to go after this treasure, right? So having students define what is purpose. I think certain students, especially in this new generation, are very disconnected from purpose. They don't ask themselves the question of, why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? Why am I fulfilling? What am I supposed to be fulfilling? Right? It's just touch and go. It's TikTok dance trend, whatever I'm going to do. And then class is out. I'm going to where I'm going, and no inner thought about what I'm supposed to be doing here. Where do we go? What are we supposed to be doing? Like, am I helping people? What dreams do I have? What goals do I have? It's very, like I said, touch and go. Present moment. It's all you got, right? So once we learn and discuss purpose, we talk about the courage to pursue that calling, whatever you feel that might be. And letting students know the alchemy, it can change. It can be transformative. You can decide today in your first year that you want to be a nurse. And then after, I don't know, you take some classes, you realize you suck at science or that you don't like science. And you're like, you know what? I don't want to do this. You can change. You can figure out something else. You can reroute. And that's okay. There's no judgment there, right? Letting them make mistakes You had another question?
I did.
Go ahead, yeah.
As you're talking, I like this voice, I agree with everything you're saying, and yet this voice comes in that's like, there's so much pressure on them to actually stay the course, which I don't agree that they should, like, I agree change, but like, do you guys in the classroom, do they voice like the pressures that are coming from, like, I think the college sometimes gives them, puts pressure on them not to change, or puts pressure on them to keep going, right, not to stop and contemplate with self-question. So does that tension, like, do they express that pressure?
I do find that it also depends on the rapport you have with your students.
Yeah.
Because if you're not connected to your students, they don't feel comfortable telling you, well, my advisor is saying this and this is what I want to do, or my parents are saying this. But it's getting them to recognize it and put that down and say, you know what? It's about what I want. It's about my personal journey versus, oh, my parents sent me here to be a doctor, or my parents sent me here to be an engineer. Like them having to feel like they can talk to me. And I feel like they can because I'm a psychologist at heart. So people just randomly come up to me and tell me their business, right? Please help me, right? And I'm like, I just gave you free advice. That's $60 an hour, okay, But I find myself doing that every class, like after class, where students will be like, "Well, my mom said," and I'm like, "Okay, I get that, but what do you think? What do you want to do? What do you want to be?" Right? And how are you going to set boundaries for when you come up against that pressure, that religion, that advising, that whatever, even your own self, like your own inside saying, I have to do this. Right? So I think I'm just here as as a guide, honestly. That's what we are as professors. We play crucial roles, but we are just messengers and guides. We're not people like in psychology. I've done private practice before, and we always say you never tell people exactly what to do. You advise them on what they could do and their options, but you never say, this is what you should do, this is what's going to work. You never do that. You never give direct advice, or you never say things like, oh, it's going to get better. You don't know that. You can't make false promises, empty promises. I don't want to do that anyway. Because then they're like, oh, but you said, and my mom said, and now she's on her way up here to talk to you. And I'm like, you know? So, rerouting, redirecting, and there are no mistakes, only lessons. No mistakes, just lessons. This is the best part of the book. Because this is when Santiago figures out the treasure. The treasure is not actual treasure. It's not gold and all this amazing stuff, right? It's the wisdom that he gets on the journey. And that's the cliffhanger of the book. That's where we leave him, right? Where you don't know if he actually found the treasure or if he didn't. But he did because there were mistakes that were made along the journey. And that's okay because they're not actual mistakes. They're lessons, they're things that you learned about yourself, about people, and that's okay. And I think oftentimes our students don't feel as though they can make mistakes, as though they can fall down and get back up and pick something else up and tinker around over here and I don't think, and I hate to say that. I want them to be able to do that. And I think actually the whole purpose of Human Horizons gives that opportunity to connect to a real and practical, I'm a human. Like I can make mistakes. I can fall down, but I learn this, and this. Yeah, I fell in love and my girlfriend dumped me or whatever, whatever, and I failed one of my classes. But guess what? I can retake the class and I can get back up and I can keep going, right? Our students are non-traditional, so they are not our typical, type of students. So things happen. Um, this past week with the whole snowed in thing, right? Inclement weather. Some students have to worry about what they're going to eat, where they're going to stay, all types of things. So it's just barriers and obstacles may be in their way, and there are lessons along that way. All right. The other part of that classroom activity, of course, that wouldn't all be in the same day, but we would be writing personal legends, including our own personal struggles. So also a part of this and teaching this text would be about having students write their own personal legend. What do you want your own, or what has resonated with you to write out your own personal story and the struggles you've had, whatever you feel like sharing, whether you want to share it, if you don't have to, if you don't want to, right? We share this in small groups. So we would break out and share this in smaller groups. That way it doesn't feel like a huge undertaking where it's like, oh, everybody's watching me share my story and, I don't want everybody to know about this, right? So I feel that students do better when they're in smaller groups and they can share with a partner. Sometimes a small group could be two. It's like, just share with the person next to you, okay? Not 3 or 4 people, because you don't know those people, you don't like those people, or whatever, They can also reflect on resistance as well. The symbols that we will be exploring in the alchemy or the alchemist is the desert, the alchemy, obviously, transformation, omens, signs that Santiago gets as he's in the desert, and of course, the desert itself. I don't know why the desert is up there twice. I should have just put it once, my bad. Okay. Um, and then we parallel this also with collective consciousness. In psychology, Jung, Adler, and a lady by the name of Karen Horney established, right after Freud developed his id, ego, and superego, they established what they call the collective conscious. The collective conscious is this idea that we are all connected in morality and in ethics, and we're all connected in what is right and what is wrong, right? And we have certain customs and certain things we adhere to, certain things that we know is wrong, like stealing is wrong, murder is wrong, right? And so bringing this into the text, Santiago learns about the collective consciousness. Just because guys robbed you doesn't mean you have to be a robber. Just because you experience certain things along your way doesn't mean you have to be a part of that world. You can be a part of the collective conscious world that is not hurting people, but being a productive and law-abiding person in this world, right? Contributing to the soul of the world, right? We'll talk about the soul of the world and what that looks like, right? Interconnectedness, how we're all connected. We're all from different cultures, from different places, from all over. You got different ages, different groups, different everything. We're all interconnected. And then that sense of shared longing, that we all have this longing in us, this something that we want to do, want to be, but it's like, how do I get there? How do I get there from here to there when there's all this stuff in the way, right? And this could be done online. So there'll be discussion prompt. How are we connected? How do our choices affect others? The choices that we make. Do we, make this choice and it could hurt this person? Do we make a personal choice? And I go back to the whole thing of culture, and your mom wants you to be this. How do you deal with that? How do you tell her, I don't want to do that. I want to do this, right? And how do our choices truly affect others? We have some students who have children. How do your choices affect your children? How do your choices affect those around you, right? How do your children look at you and see you graduate, and what does that mean for them, right? And you not feeling bad because you decided to go to school later in life, right? Like, so all of these things that we think about as we're connected. Transformational outcomes. What this is going to produce in our students after they finish this book is they will have increased empathy. They will have increased self-awareness, and they will have purpose-driven thinking. If they don't learn anything about anything when it comes to this book, they will learn more about themselves. And that is the entire existence of why we're here, is to learn more about ourselves so that we can put that out into the world. Closing reflection. What is calling you forward? Are you listening to your heart? What story are you contributing to? Is the questions that they will be asked at the end of this teaching. And that's it. Thank you so much. So questions? Yeah. Got time for questions. Good, 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 good. Good on time. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was super inspiring and like amazingly in the spirit of the as you said. Presentation. So yeah, one thing I was really struck by how the way that you're presenting this book seems very like meta level in a sense that you're using the if I'm following correctly, you're using the book to make connections for the students about the nature of education itself, among other things, their whole experience. So I'm wondering if you could talk about that. Like, do you thematize that explicitly, like to get them to see these kinds of aspects of their experience in the book? And then I was just going to say, students meta level in a sense of experience, their experience, but it's also meta level about notion of transformation. Like we're also meta level about this thing that we center in our program, which is to say able to transform text. But it's text and transform. I was really inspired by how you constant involvement that you're talking about here. So that's literally what we're talking about. So I just invite you to comment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can explore multiple things when it comes, because this text is really about how the student sees themselves. And so that's going to connect with them in different ways than it will connect with me. It's not even about how it connects to me. It's about how it connects to them. So if they connect that to their academic career, if they connect that to the job they choose, if they connect that to the major they choose because they're battling family issues because culture and religion says this, if they're battling, coming back to school and looking at their kids and that being motivation, like there's just so many levels of what the student themselves can explore for them. And this is a very personal text. I feel like it is a collective conscious text, but it's also very personable, right? It's about Santiago and his journey, and it's about seeing yourself in his shoes, like the parallels between that. And that's why I think it's so modern. Like every time I read The Alchemy the first time when I was like in the 8th grade. Yeah, Paulo Coelho. Yeah, I read him in like the 8th grade. And then I didn't read it again until I taught it to high school students in AP English Lit at a high school I started teaching at. And then I taught it again. And I was like, this book is meaning something different. Because the 8th grade me and then the grown me is like, this is not the same, it's not the same book, right? So every time you read this book, I feel like, and with other texts as well, you get something different every time. So I don't know if that answered your question. There will be different themes within that discussion of the book, Mhm.
I just had a couple of thoughts. The first one was that when I was coming in, I was thinking, I don't know why I was thinking this, how one of the things that's difficult to persuade people with the human horizons is that they'll say, well, I basically teach that way, like, we all kind of teach that way. But there's so much of the scaffolding of classroom as a specific kind of space of community that's being undone, in various different ways. And so sometimes you need a little bit of extra support to make sure that it still is that. And the way that you describe how you teach this, where it makes, like, it's almost like the text is important, but it also serves to help everybody in the class have this sense of community. So my first comment was just that the way that you teach this reminds me of why having a program like this is important.